believe we have stopped on page 133, right? عبد المحسن العتيبي. Alright, before we continue our session, guys, do you need anything about what we have already studied?
No.
Is there any question about what we have already studied about ancient Greece civilization? So a quick revision. We have already spoken about the Greek civilization, and we started with the early Greek civilization. And later we started speaking about the early Greek city-states. While speaking about the city-states, we have spoken about the landscape, how it formed the political border, because most of the land, exactly 80% of ancient Greece was mountain. Because of that, the mountains, they created a natural barriers between the city-states of ancient Greece. And we said how living by the sea benefit them very, very good, as they started fishing in the sea, and also they started to have trade with other nations next to them, like the Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and people in the island of Sicily, and also in Italy. And later we started speaking about the rise of the Greek states, and we spoke about how the rise of the Greek states differed from one city to another, and that each one of them had its own type of government. Some of them were monarchy or aristocracy or even oligarchy. So the types of the government varied and changed from one city-state to the other, and we have said that while speaking about how the government evolved. So what about the new ways of war that shape Greece? We also spoke about that, and we said that most of the ways that shaped the Greek war changed and varied as their techniques did so. One of the main or the most important technique that they used was the phalanx technique. While using the phalanx technique, we said how the soldiers must protect the soldier next to them, and they were dependent totally on spears. So using spheres and also using using the shields to protect themselves in one formation, line after another. They must keep the formation strong. And this is the geography that shapes early Greek, and how most of the land, as we said, they are all looking at the Eurasian and Mediterranean Sea. Over 80% of the land is mountains. This is the type of the this like this. This is very important, speaking about the types of the government or the forms of the government. So now, that's okay. We will start speaking about the discipline and the welfare in the city of Sparta. We have spoken also about the Spartan people. Do you know what can you remember about the Spartans? Okay,
What teacher?
what do you remember about the Spartans?
Your sound is lagging. Can you say it
Hello?
again?
Hello.
Yes. Yes, yes, now it's good. Can you say it
Uh,
again?
what do you remember about the Spartans, the people of Sparta?
Uh, they were very strong people,
Yes, that's fact.
and they made state-owned slaves.
Okay, so the city of Sparta was another city-state of the early Greek civilization, and that have, yes, Abdullah, do you have anything?
Yes, teacher, they were very barbaric.
Barbaric. Uh, okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? All right. So to speak about the Spartan people, we have to say that they were one of the most and the best important city-states of early Greece civilization. Besides that, they were very, very strong warriors. As I have told you before, they tend to make some sort of ritual since a child is born until he becomes a strong warrior. This ritual is totally dependent upon creating him strongly physically and also mentally. And they were the ones who invented actually the phalanx technique in war, and they used it perfectly until, of course, the Roman Empire came with other new techniques that was even better than the phalanx after some centuries after the Spartan people. So, about the discipline and the welfare in Sparta, can you read Abdullah? Frayan?
Uh, the Spartans, the Spartans, teacher,
Yes.
the Spartans were Endorian invaders from the north who conquered Lucina. Uh, Lucina? Can you spell the word?
Laconia.
Laconia, in the southern part of Greece, and built the city-state of Sparta. The Dorian invaders turned the conquered people into state-owned slaves called helots and made them work the land. Because the helots greatly outnumbered their rulers, the Spartans set up a brutal system of strict control.
Alright. So simply we need to know that the Spartans were Dorian invaders. That's one thing. And also, while the Dorian invaders turned the conquered people into city-owned slaves. What is the meaning of this? So, for example, if we marched toward this city and we started to invade that city, all the people who are living in that city, we will take them as slaves and we will make them work the land, meaning that to become peasants, to become farmers, to grow our crops, etc. By that, they are outnumbering us. One important reason because they are outnumbered. Okay, they are many people, so the rule itself must be a strict one. Like what we have mentioned in the Chinese civilization, if you can remember from the first semester, when you have gathering a lot of people under your command, when you invade many countries and many cities, of course they will outnumber you. Consequently, you need to make your control very strict because by that you will be able to control all of these people by fear. And later on, after that, you can control them by love or even by making some project and by being a good example for them. But first of all, you need to control them well so that a rebellion or a revolution will not occur during your rule. Okay, so Spartans were Dorians and they descended from the north and they took the people for the city they invaded as slaves, and those slaves outnumbered them. Consequently, they made their rule strict one. Any question?
No.
Okay, turning the second point about the discipline rules daily life. What about the rules of daily life that they have practiced, Abdurrahman?
Yes, teacher, I read it.
Yes.
Discipline rules daily life. From childhood, a Spartan prepared to be part of a military state. Officials examined every newborn, and sickly children were abandoned to die. Spartans wanted future soldiers and the future mothers of soldiers to be healthy. At the age of 7, boys began training for a lifetime in the military. They moved into barracks where they were toughened by a coarse diet, hard exercise, and rigid discipline. This strict and harsh discipline made Spartan youths excellent soldiers. To develop cunning and supplement their diet, boys were even encouraged to steal food. If caught, though, they were beaten severely. Uh, at the age of 20, a man could marry, but he continued to live in the barracks for another 10 years and to eat there for another 40 years. At the age of 30, after further training, he took his place in the assembly.
All right. So this is about the daily life of the Spartan people. As I have told you, they had that strict ritual in order to make their newborns very, 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 very strong warriors. So the practice starts once a child is being born. So some soldiers will come to examine a newborn child, and they will see if this child is fragile, weak, showing some views or sorts of illnesses. So they will just take him and abandon him in the wild, especially when it's snowy, so that he will die or some wild animals will eat him because they do not need any weak chain in the society. And of course, it's prohibited in our religion. That is not good. Okay, and when the child is good, they leave him with their parents for 7 years. Once a child becomes seven, now his training starts. He will go to some place at the military and starts his course diet training. In that training, they are beaten, they are starving, and they are suffering and showing all kind of remorse, all kind of anger. They are trying to teach them all the possible ways of defending themselves and how to stay alive in a very severe environment. So all of these actions led the Spartan kids to grow into very strong and harsh soldiers. So one of the main reasons that the Spartans were very, 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 very strong warriors is that they always, for their entire life, they suffered from a harsh training that led them into being very harsh warriors also. Okay, so before we jump to the next point, if any one of you were born in Sparta, what do you think would have happened to him?
Harsh life.
For me, they would have abandoned me in the wild.
What?
They would have abandoned me in the wild, I believe. They would let me
Why?
die. Okay, so we can see how the life was very bad for them at that time. What about the Spartan women? So, the Spartan women, are they required to do some sort of practice also, or training, or what? Let's see. Ahmed, you have a mic? Ali?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, Ahmed, can you read?
From Spartan women.
Yes?
Spartan women. Girls to had uh, rigorous and bringing as part of a warrior society. They were expected to produce healthy sons for the army. They therefore were required to exercise and strengthen their bodies, something no other Greek woman did. Like other Greek women, Spartan women had to obey their fathers or husbands. Yet, under Spartan law, they had the right to inherit property
Yes?
because men were uh, occupied with war. Some women took on responsibilities such as running the family's estate.
Right. So simply, just like men in the Spartan society, women also must practice some rituals and practice also some exercises and training. Because simply all the men in the military or the officials, they expect women to get birth to healthy kids so that they can become strong warriors. And a kid will not be healthy enough until his mother herself is so healthy and strong. So they asked the Spartan women to practice some sort of exercises in order to strengthen their bodies. Besides that, the Spartan women they held responsibility and place in their assembly because Spartan women were the only one. If you speak to any of the Spartan women at that time, for some civilization, women were not allowed to speak in the presence of men, except the Spartan women, because the Spartan women knew that only they can get birth to that strong warrior of a Spartan soldier. Okay, so Spartan women they held very high responsibility and very high position in their society. Besides that, they inherited some property after a father or a son or even a husband dies in action abroad. And because most of the men were occupied and so busy with war, most of the Spartan women they held the responsibility for running the family affairs and the family states also. Okay, so regarding to the Spartan women, they held a very high position in their society, not like other ancient societies. So far, so good.
Yes.
Okay, so Spartan women and jumping to the citizens and the non-citizens. Referring to the citizen and non-citizen, it's speaking about those of the Spartan warriors themselves and that of the slaves. They enslaved from the action of the war, or even traders who came to trade with the Spartan people and stayed there for a while. Hassan, do you have a mic? Salman al-Humaydan, do you have a mic? Salman Iswailam. All right. Abdullah al-Hidari. If I call your name, answer in the chat or okay, no problem, Salman. Or raise your hand. All right. Abdul Mohsen al-Utaibi. Abdul Mohsen al-Utaibi. Okay. عبد الله الفيان اوكي، عبد الرحمن الابراهيم اوكي، احمد الوالي.
Yes, teacher.
علي. علي نوال في الماضي. علي الماضي. هلو. عزام. اوكي. حسن. حسن عبد الجبار. مشاري فهد. ريان الكلوي. اوكي ريان. سعد الغامدي. سعيد الغامدي. سلمان الحميدان. سلمان السويلم. سعود السفيان. سلطان and Sultan. Raise your hands. Okay. Okay علي. سلمان الحميدان. سعود السفيان. سلطان الثويبي and Sultan بني كرملة. Alright. Sultan بني كرملة. سلطان الثويبي. Okay. سعود السفيان. سعود with us. Okay, so again, to speak about the citizens and the non-citizens of the Spartan people, we need to know that as a huge city-state and holding a very strong warrior, we need to know that the Spartan people had citizens and also non-citizens inside their society. So, to speak about them, in order to be a citizen of Sparta, a person had to be descended from the Dorians who invaded the land. Spartan citizens owned land but did not farm it, since that was the job of the Helots. The Helots are the people that they invaded and enslaved later. Although that foreigners lived in Sparta, they were unwelcome guests and could be expelled in Sparta. Non-citizens outnumbered citizens, but they had few rights and were strictly controlled by the government, meaning that Sparta was for the Spartan. Sparta was for the Spartan. If you are not a direct descendant of the Dorians who invaded the land from the north, you cannot become a Spartan citizen. And if you were to be enslaved during the Spartan era, you will have only very, very few rights, and the government will strictly control you and your life. At one time, Sparta had to stand alone. The Spartans isolated themselves from other Greeks. They looked down on trade and wealth, forbade their own citizens, forbade forbade their own citizens to travel, and had little use of new ideas. or arts. While other Greeks admired the Spartans' military skills, no other city state imitated their rigorous ways of life. The Spartans themselves are willing to die for their city. They have very, very, very strong connection to their city that they are willing to die for the city anytime. Some suggest because they have no reason to live. In the long run, Sparta suffered from its rigid ways and inability to change. Over time, its warriors' class shrank and its power declined. As any other thing in the history, whatever goes up must go down again. So, Sparta, although that it stood alone as a very magnificent city, stood alone in everything. Stopped to trade with other nations, and also stopped to have communication with other people. They were only concerned with the act of war and nothing else. On the other hand, we have another city-state, which is Athens. In Athens, of course, the act itself is totally changeable than that of Troy. Because before we start reading about democracy in Athens, let's watch a small video about them.
Philosophy, democracy, and heroes. These are just a few achievements of the legendary civilization known as ancient Greece. Ancient Greece was born on the shores of the Aegean Sea about 4,000 years ago. In over a millennium, it expanded to lands as far west as Spain and as far east as India. Throughout this age of empire, the ancient Greeks made political, militaristic, and cultural achievements that resonated long after their empire fell. Part of the ancient Greeks' legacy involved politics, one of which was the political system of Greece itself. Unlike many nations that were under unified rule, Greece was a collection of over 1,500 territories that acted as sovereign nations. Called city-states, these territories had their own rulers and sometimes fought each other. Another political development was the institution of the first large-scale democracy. Developed in the city-state of Athens, democratic rule was a way to give the Greek people representation and political power. The Greeks also earned a strong reputation for their military. The military helped expand the Greek Empire by establishing colonies overseas, and it protected Greece itself from foreign invaders like the Persian Empire. When such a threat occurred, city-states united to defend their homeland. Many Greeks, particularly in Sparta, took immense pride in their military and regarded their soldiers as heroes. Their heroism was often turned into legend, thanks to literary works like the Iliad. War heroes also inspired the creation of the Olympics, which celebrated physical competition. Of all aspects of ancient Greek civilization, their cultural contributions left a considerable mark on the Western world. Particularly noteworthy were the ancient Greeks' art and architecture. They created incredible sculptural works, such as standing figures and reliefs. Plus, they developed 3 types of columns and incorporated them to structures like the Parthenon. This artistry was imitated by other civilizations and spread throughout the globe for thousands of years. How the Greeks interpreted the world was also reflected in other cultures. Greek religion, which was comprised of many anthropomorphic deities, helped shape the spiritual beliefs of the Etruscans and later the ancient Romans. Greek philosophy, which explored matters of reason, ethics, and natural law, influenced later civilizations' achievements in politics and science. Greek language made quite an impact as well. Ancient Greek, at about 3,400 years old, provided the basis of many modern languages. The English language alone has thousands of words with Greek roots. Ancient Greece's art history. With contributions that lasted for millennia, the civilization of ancient Greece is nothing short of legendary.
So, of course, it is one of the most important civilization that has evolved in our planet. So we will stop here for today. And we will start with Athens tomorrow, and also speak about the philosophers of Athens. Any questions so far, grade 9?
No, thank you.